Good afternoon and welcome to A Scotch and a Beer with Officer Dan. Feeling a bit emo, hence the eye makeup, but I was just at a Halloween shindig and this stuff is freaking hard to get off. Anyway, I drop these every Monday, so if you want to get the inside scoop on the come up to becoming an FD driver and all the antics in between from yours truly, drop me a subscribe and hit that notification bell, please and thank you. Now, 2013 was already shaping up to be one of the craziest years that I've had, and still is to this day. In the last episode, I hodgepodged probably the ugliest S13 on the planet together and took it out to round one of Top Drift, where I immediately crashed into a building and broke it. We repaired it, then I immediately ramped it 4 feet in the air and destroyed it. But not enough to take me out of the event. I'd leave that up to the tow truck guy who destroyed my front end. And that was the last episode. In this episode, I'm going to go over one of the two major things that happened this very same month in 2013. First off, after coming home from Top Drift and Vegas Drift, I became Danny George's spotter randomly and on the spot. And secondly, we filmed Motorcycle vs. Car Drift Battle 3, the Driftpocalypse, in Albuquerque, right after I got back from that trip. I'm gonna do these in order, so technically I became Danny George's spotter first, then we filmed Motorcycle vs. Car. So that's what I'm gonna start with today, but first, a scotch and a beer. As you can see, there's a lot of technology in this can. Mountains turn blue when it's really cold. Now, the colder a beverage is, the less you're going to taste. So what they're saying is this is a shitty beer that they mask with being really, really cold. You gotta drink it ice cold or you're not gonna like it because it's shit beer. Your boy Officer Dan here is gonna tap the Rockies. Yeah. I mean, it's good in a pinch. It's good when you're drinking at a big event. It's good when you need to buy a lot of beer for cheap. It's just not good. You know what I'm saying? For the scotch, I have the Oban Game of Thrones, The Night's Watch. So all the different regions of Scotland released a specific scotch for that area based off of the areas in the show The Game of Thrones. You can buy the whole collection of them for like 800 bucks. It's quite expensive, but really there's only a few of them that stood out, and this is one of them, the Night's Watch. Now, I've been trying to keep my eye out for one of these and actually found one in a duty-free in London. And the guy in the duty-free packaged it in the wrong customs bag, so when I got back into the United States, the custom agent kindly took it from me. This is the only human being on the planet that I've ever called a cunt when I'm not in Australia. I asked him to dump it out and he refused and just straight up stole my scotch. So anyway, I found one of these sitting in the back of a liquor store, all dusty, and finally am going to get to try it. I probably shouldn't drink it, but I'm going to do it anyway. This liquid's richness is balanced with a woody, spicy dryness that could undoubtedly keep the Night's Watch warm on even the coldest of nights. And so this is going to be an Islay. They have Targaryen, Stark, Lannister, Tully, Tyrell, Baratheon, and Greyjoy, all from different distilleries around Scotland. So I am trying this one 100% straight up. Reminds me of Christmas. I don't know, for some reason, I get a lot of reminders of Christmas on this one. Don't know why. So the nose is sweet. I got like Christmas cookies. I think that's what it reminds me of. While it's in your mouth, it's pretty intense, but it's still sweet. It's not until the very end when you're swallowing that you get the peatiness and the smokiness. And that is why I like the Islay ones. And this is kind of a sweeter version of the normal Oban, which is usually pretty damn smoky. So I'm super into this and I can see why people want this so much. I've seen these bottles going upwards of like 450 bucks. So if you do find one of these, snag one for sure. And don't be an idiot like me and drink it. Oh, it's good. That's really good. Now, strangely enough, I got back home from Vegas Drift, the car was wrecked, took it over to Andy and said, hey, help. Help! Andy started working on the car, refabricating a front end, and I got a call from a buddy of mine, Danny George, who I had become acquaintances with during Top Drift, and Vegas Drift and other random places that I'd seen him at, like in Phoenix and so on and so forth. We chatted on the internet a bunch and chatted when we were at events together, and he was rolling through Albuquerque on his way out to Formula Drift Atlanta and asked me to go eat some dinner. So I dropped what I was doing and I went to go meet him and his 3 crew, which was John Maudlin, George Kirkopolis, and Kyle LeBlanc. John was his media guy, George was his mechanic, and Kyle was the tuner / team manager. We chatted a bunch, especially about me launching my car 4 feet in the air and how funny and stupid that was, and how I won the event technically because I got the most media coverage from anybody else that was there. Nobody remembered who won, but everybody remembered who jumped the highest. That was a fun conversation, and then it kind of transitioned to, hey, you should go with us to Atlanta and be my spotter. Thought about it for like 2 seconds and said, all right. So he took me back over to my house. I grabbed some clothes, my Officer Dan gear, and we headed off 5 deep in his diesel truck towards Atlanta. That was that. I was now a spotter on a professional drift team. Now, did I know what this meant? No. Did I know what I needed to do? No. Did I know how important this would be in me choosing whether or not to run Formula D? No. But again, and I've gone over this 100 times in these videos, I was able to say yes. He said, all you gotta do is pay for your plane ticket home and you're golden. So I booked it while we were driving out there. Now on that quaint 27-hour drive, I would have no idea that this would be the most important decision that I could have made, learning-wise at least. Please, 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 if you want to do FD, if you have aspirations to do FD, become something on somebody's pro team first before you go into FD. I promise it'll make your life 1,000 times easier. Be a spotter, be a media guy, be a tire changer, be a go-to errand boy, be anything, volunteer, beg, squeeze your way in. Whatever you can do to get on an FD team. If you have aspirations of being a driver, do that first. The lessons that you learn are invaluable to you becoming a driver. And more importantly, you learn who's who before you actually get there. Plus, it'll let you know right off the bat if you have what it takes to actually do Formula D. Timeout, Brandon Wicknick calling. Sup, B-Wicks?
Hey.
Hey.
Oh, man.
What are you doing?
Did you post a video today?
No, I'm actually filming it right now. You're being recorded.
Oh, sick.
Let me finish this. I have like half an hour left, and then I'll go out there and look and let you know right away.
Okay, I'm anxious to see your video. We'll talk later.
Alright, dude.
Okay, bye.
Peace. Anywho, Brandon Wicknick, everybody. Now, being on an FD team is going to teach you not only what it takes to do FD, but what it takes to actually succeed, because you get to see all the other teams as well and kind of figure out what's wrong and what's right. Apparently, I didn't pay attention to any of this because I did everything wrong, but we'll go over that in future videos. These, however, are the lessons I learned as being a spotter. Now, on the long road out to the ATL, Danny laid down the intricacies of what it took to actually be a spotter in FD, like what to look for, how to actually pay attention, where I needed to be, when I needed to be, and I just soaked all that information in. About midway through the panhandle of Texas, we freaking ran out of diesel. We had to walk to this other place, hitch a ride into town, grab diesel, put it back in the truck, and then wait 25 minutes while the damn thing primed. Lesson number 1, never run out of diesel. Now we're continuing along. We cross into Oklahoma. We're regaling tales of old, talking about how ridiculous FD cars are and how simple Danny George's car is, making like 500 horsepower with nitrous on an LS and a Miata, and we get pulled over by a state trooper right as soon as we crossed the border into Oklahoma. Turns out in Oklahoma, just owning a dually truck, you're required to have DOT numbers on the side. Apparently they're over the weight limit for the highways, and you have to have freaking DOT numbers for a truck you buy at a goddamn dealership. So they put us on the scales. They weighed Danny. He was like 5,000 pounds overweight as is with his loaded down trailer, even with a Miata in it, plus us. And $850 in cash later, they let us go, and we meandered about our way through Oklahoma. Lesson number 2, never drive through Oklahoma on the East Coast swing. Avoid it at all costs. Take the extra time, go through Louisiana, go through any other state except Oklahoma. Just don't do it, it's not worth it. Lesson number 3, and I went over this in one of my other videos that I've posted at some point in my life, pick a good crew. The atmosphere inside the back of Danny's truck, even though we were sandwiched in there like sardines, we were 3 deep in the back, 2 deep in the front, the vibes were good. Like, it was genuinely good. These guys were great road trip partners. I've had some shitty ones, believe me. Now, while I had no idea how well I would fare as a spotter, my personality definitely meshed with all of these guys, so at least I was good at that. I had no idea how important the aspect of a team was until I saw this kind of firsthand, and that would escalate as we would actually get to the Formula D event. This is super important because if you start with a good team in Pro-Am and then graduate into FD, the process is so much less painful because everybody already knows what they're supposed to do. You're not having to retrain and re-educate and have bad experiences with somebody you hadn't taken on a road trip before. Got all that shit dialed in. I would end up learning this the hard way over and over and over. Ugh. Anyway, after taking out a few drive-through things because Danny didn't want to park the rig and go in somewhere else, shrubberies, the speaker thing where you actually place your order, whatever, didn't matter. We just kept on trucking. We finally arrived at Road Atlanta. We rolled right up and went to the wheel call booth, and this is where I'm gonna lay lesson 3 down on you. Always make really, really good friends with the people that actually make Formula Drift function. And first up are the glorious ladies that run Will Call, headed up by Cassidy Tanaka Fixmer, who is now a good friend of mine. Her husband is a good friend of mine, Ernie Fixmer, ex-FD judge, great dude. The people that run Will Call are absolute saints. They put up with so much BS from not only the fans, but the teams. And this was just after me watching this interaction happen for 20 minutes. For some reason, most people can't read and or follow instructions, so there's always something that goes wrong. It's like going to the MVD or the DMV. Something is going to be wrong and you're going to get paperwork, or you didn't do something, or whatever. Anyway, they are saints. So Danny introduced me to Cassidy and said this is the most important person in FD, which of course made her smile, and it is correct. We talked a little bit and painlessly breezed through Will Call. Need extra tickets? Need to get back into the track late because you forgot your wallet? Need to get extra people in? Need any special requests or things to happen? Will Call are the people that make that happen. So thank you, ladies of Will Call at Formula Drift. You guys are awesome. Now we headed into the pits at Road Atlanta, and as we were kind of unpacking and getting everything set up, then he said, bring all the containers from inside the trailer and put them out on the tables. And that brings up lesson number 4. Always have something to sell to people at a Formula D event if you are a driver. And at this point, it was still free for Formula D drivers to actually sell stuff out of their trailers as long as they weren't on Vendors Row. Danny capitalized on that-ish. Shirts, bandanas, anything that was orange, and it was just free branding for him. And it was crazy how many people in the crowd would just be walking around in orange stuff. It just kept everybody interested in Danny George. So that was another lesson that I learned right away. Always be slinging merch at FD. It also keeps fans at your booth and interacting with you or somebody at your booth basically at all times. It was also at this point that I had learned a very important lesson number 5. Andy Luck. This guy came over and talked to Danny, and he seemed friendly enough. I got introduced, everything was going well, and then after he walked off, Danny explained to me that this is the dude. Like the dude. This is the dude who at all costs you make friends with because he can make your life in Formula D a living freaking hell. Andy runs the show on all fronts and he is the law. If you're on the other side watching somebody else get the law laid down onto them, it's funny. But if he's doing it to you, you're not having a good day. Danny said you don't want that wrath upon you, so do everything you can to make friends with Andy. Noted, I said. Now over the next few years, I would witness Andy laying down said long arm many times. Fortunately for me, I was never under that wrath, and I never had one issue with Andy. Now that the pit was all set up, I had met a couple of the important characters in Formula D. Danny walked me over and showed me to where the actual spotter's booth was. It was also at this point that I got to go do the track walk, which at an FD event, even though you've done the track probably 50 times as an FD driver, if you started early enough, everybody walks the track just to make sure everything's legit. You can ask questions with the judges, they show you the clipping points right there, and it's just a good experience. So this was my first track walk at FD. This leads me to lesson number 6. Always go to the driver's meeting if you have the ability to do so. I know they've kind of limited the amount of people that can be in driver's meetings, but before it was Kyle, myself, and Danny would go to the driver's meetings. You'll learn a ton. And the judges are super picky. So if you're not writing down exactly what the judges want to see, how are you going to relay that to your driver? So if you are a spotter, make sure you are at the damn meetings. Also turns out in pro meetings, drivers ask the same dumb questions that they do in regular meetings. Well, what happens if a bird flies into my windshield? What happens if I hit a patch of grass somewhere and it flies up and hits something? What happens if there's too much smoke and we need to put flags up? I digress. Luckily, Andy, the enforcer, is there to make sure that the meeting goes smoothly and tells people that their questions are stupid and that they need to shut up. So we go through the meeting, I got my notepad, and I'm taking notes like a madman. Sick. Lesson number 7. Though you may see something on the live stream and you may see something in the crowd, the only spot that matters is where the judges are. So their view counts. The spotter's booth is usually right next to or right in front of the judging stand so that we are seeing the same things that the judges are seeing, which is different than what the crowd is seeing, which is different than what the live stream is seeing. I know the judges get a lot of flack from the internet and the crowd, but they see things differently because they're in a different spot than most of you are. It's just how it is. Cut the goddamn judges some slack. Now, as a spotter, being at the same spot as the judges really helps in helping your driver to do better. Not only that, but you have access to talk to the judges and get feedback on your driver's performance. Lesson number 8. Pay attention to not only your driver and what he's doing and how to make him better, but all of the other drivers in the field as well. Do they enter fast? Do they enter slow? Do they flick in? Is it a Scandinavian? Do they e-brake in? Are they left foot braking at any points on the course? Do they struggle at any point where they are going to lose points or gain points where your driver wouldn't? All of these things can be used against them when you are up to battle with them in tandem. And I will go over this in some of our other rounds where this came into play and actually got us the win a couple of times. You also have to know your driver's car, the advantages and disadvantages of a Miata versus any other car on the field is a big one. It's a hard car to tandem with because your target is much smaller. Which brings me to lesson number 9. Do not be nice to your driver. Unless they're extremely emotionally fragile, don't be nice to them. And there are some drivers out there that are. Totally understand that. Luckily, Danny, George, and I did not have that relationship. If they're sucking, tell them that they're sucking. But you also have to come back as to why they're sucking and how to make that sucking not suck so much. If you are a spotter on a Formula D team, you should at least have some driving experience, probably Pro-Am and or higher. So you should be able to tell your driver when to make gearing changes, when to make tire pressure changes, throttle input changes, e-brake changes, line changes, and you should be able to explain how to do all of those things in case that driver doesn't quite understand what the hell you're talking about. Of course, having good communication equipment is paramount to this. We would always just rent communication equipment from FD, which is an option, but it's really good to buy your own stuff. Now, lesson number 10 goes back to communication with the judges. Now, the judges aren't going to talk to you the whole time because they're busy watching people drive. But during qualification, top 32, top 16, you have to be vocal if something messes up, and that's that lesson number 10. If you see something that's out of place, you need to tell the judges immediately, not later. And I'll go into my first spotting experience ever at Formula D competition. And I'm gonna play this as me and Danny George. Danny is sucking at hitting all the clipping points out there. I want to see more throttle commitment coming up the hill. You're not even close, dude. Make this shit happen. Also, your entry is weak and late. You're also bobbling as you're coming towards the first inner clip. Cut that shit out. It looks ridiculous. Okay, 20 runs later. All right, dude, your runs are looking good finally. Let's go. Qualifies 14th. Good work, idiot. Thanks. Top 32 battle would be up against a legendary driver, Ryan Tuerck. He'd been driving well all weekend so far, but so had Danny. And Danny qualifying higher meant Danny had to lead first. So I got on the radio with Danny and told him he needed to lay that ish down. That is the only feedback that I gave him. Now, Danny laid down the single best run that I'd seen him run all weekend long. Tons of angle, tons of smoke. He was phasing Ryan Tuerck left and right. Only issue is he smashed the outer clip coming up the hill, basically rendering his run a 0 because he was a tire off and he hit the clipping point. After giving Danny said positive feedback about how the crowd was super into it and that was the best run I'd seen him do all day, I told him he needed to be inside of Ryan Tuerck. And Danny didn't disappoint. On entry, setting himself up for what would have been an epic tandem battle. Unfortunately, Ryan over-angled himself and slowed down coming to a stop. Now, there may or may not have been contact inside there, and I was anxious to see what Danny would tell me on the radio. Definitely hit Ryan afterwards and ended up with Ryan's bumper in his, or his bumper in Ryan's, I can't remember which one it was. As soon as they came to a stop, I got on the radio and I was like, Danny, did you hit him? And Danny was like, absolutely not, no way, shape, or form. We totally got this. So I'm still on the radio, kind of covering my mouth a little bit and making sure that nobody can hear what I'm saying. And as I'm talking to Danny, we hadn't even ended our conversation yet, and I hear Jarod announce, and we just got word from Danny George's spotter that he did indeed hit Ryan Tuerck. Everybody in the freaking spotter's booth turned around and was like, what? You didn't say anything to anybody. They all knew that I didn't get up, that I didn't talk to anyone, that I didn't even be like, hey, Danny didn't hit him, or Danny did hit him. So I had not gotten up, nor told anybody about anything, and this is where I learned lesson number 11. Once Jarod says something to the crowd, that's the call the judges make. Now I'm back on my radio telling Danny that Jarod had just announced to the crowd that he had hit Ryan Tuerck. Now I also told Danny that I'd go over and contest that, considering I had never said anything to anybody about if he hit him or not. Now Danny, in his strange infinite wisdom, told me to let it ride. And I was like, what? That's not fair. And as you can clearly see by this footage by Lauren in HD, there was no contact. He told me on the radio, dude, we're gonna come out as heroes in this one. Trust me, we will be the crowd favorite. Now, boy, was he right. That was probably one of the best decisions Danny ever made. The amount of boos that came from the crowd once that was called was unfreaking real. Which is lesson number 12. Never underestimate having the crowd on your side. Play to that. Danny could have made me make a big deal about it and changed the score, and then they would have went one more time, but technically Danny won that battle. So he had the foresight to play to the crowd's emotions. Because of that incident, he came out not only looking like a hero because he had admitted his fault that didn't actually happen, and he sold more merchandise that weekend, I'm assuming because of sympathy, than any other weekend that we had at Formula D, period. Now, it is at this point that I'd also like to talk about something that happened. There was a large crowd after Danny lost his top 32 battle to Ryan Tuerck. When a crowd gets involved, things tend to happen. We were coerced by a few specific people and or crowd, and I'm gonna have to call Danny George here in a second and ask him who was the one that instigated this whole thing. This would kickstart a weird online melodrama between Danny George and I being gay or not. Now, I am 100% comfortable with my sexuality. I do love women, but I did give Danny George a big old smooch on the lips at Formula D Atlanta. This would spark so many memes that it wasn't even funny. And again, this goes back to proving that you don't have to win the event, but you have to win the media event. And even as a spotter, I was getting viewership from this. That happened. And what I didn't know is it would spark this whole thing made up by David Karey between me and Danny going throughout the entire season of this love-hate relationship, and it turned out to be really awesome. So there was that happened as well. Now we kicked back, cracked open some barley pops, and watched the event from right underneath the spotter's booth. There was a closed off area for drivers and teams right underneath there. So you still got the best view. It wasn't as tall, but it was still one of the best seats in the house. I got to chat with Yukio again about turbos and sponsorship and the upcoming Motorcycle vs. Car Drift Battle 3 video, etc., etc., etc. Then Danny introduced me to Paul Joe, who was at that point the motorsports manager for Hankook, which was Danny's tire sponsor. Then I came across lesson number 13. Coincidentally, right after this, I would also meet one Kevin White. Actually, I would meet the drunk Kevin White, who would end up being my roommate in the future and who will be included in more of these episodes. Being an insider in Formula Drift is way better than being on the outside of Formula Drift. Just a regular fan watching on the live stream. I'd been there selling t-shirts, but I never actually got to watch the whole damn event. And being there as part of a crew was one of the coolest experiences that I had had in my drift career. You get in the hospitality tents, you get free food from sponsors, you get to meet potential sponsors, you get to make connections. Plus, you get the best view watching from the track than anybody else that's there. All of that stuff together was freaking priceless. And that is where I'm going to end this video. Stay tuned for next time where I explain the ins, outs, and all the crazy shit that happened during the filming of Motorcycle vs. Car Drift Battle 3. In the next videos after that, I'm going to go back over my rest of my Pro-Am season and getting ready for Formula Drift once I actually made the choice to do so. This is Officer Dan, thanking you for watching once again, and I'll see you next Monday for another Scotch and a beer. Catch you guys on the flip side. Peace.